The Dragon Rider of the Dying Flame. With only 7 nights left before the life torch goes out, a royal dragon rider must cross a frozen continent to find the torch's source before an enemy kingdom claims the fire first.
7 nights left. Winter sits over the capital like a heavy iron lid. Snow and low fog press the sky down until the city feels smaller than it is. The worst thing is not hunger and not the enemy across the border. The worst thing is that the light is shrinking. The life torch stands on a stone platform in the center of the palace. It should burn like a steady sun. Now it flickers as if it has lost its breath, and the darkness waits to swallow it. If it dies, the old blessing will fade. The land will freeze deeper, grain will rot, and people will lose hope. In this kingdom, fire is not comfort. Fire is survival. Adrian Valro, a royal dragon rider, stands before the torch. He is 20, one of the youngest riders in the royal guard, but his shoulders already know the weight of orders. His hand rests on his sword. The grip is smooth from years of use, like a promise he refuses to let go. The king coughs once from the shadows. His voice sounds like dry wood cracking. 7 nights, he says. That is all the flame has left. Adrian keeps his eyes on the weak fire. He is not thinking about whether he will die on the road. He is thinking of every lamp that may go out in the city. The blacksmith's forge, the baker's oven, the lanterns of the night watch. Each light means someone will wake up tomorrow. He also thinks of the king's back, straight, even under the weight of a whole country. That expectation falls on Adrian like a cloak, heavy but impossible to drop. "I understand," Adrian says. His voice does not shake. He is not leaving for glory. He is leaving so the people can live. The departure bell rings, striking the air like a hammer on steel. Adrian walks into the royal dragon cavern. Warm breath and rising steam fill the space. A black-winged dragon waits on the rock platform. Its scales shine like knight armor. Its eyes burn like 2 sparks. Seraph, the dragon, lifts its head and exhales white mist. It knows Adrian's steps. It knows the smell of the sword. Adrian places a hand on the dragon's brow ridge. Under his palm, he feels a steady heat, like a heart that refuses to stop. This is the kingdom's last pair of wings. He climbs into the saddle. His sword taps his armor once, a small sound that feels like a warning. You are not flying to see distant lands. You are flying to carry fate back home. Seraph spreads its wings. The cavern mouth tears open with wind. Snow rises in sharp white blades. The city becomes a gray dot behind them. Below, the frozen continent opens like cracked leather. And far ahead, inside the moving clouds, something dark seems to follow their line of flight. Hunt above the storm. The sky is never quiet. By the second evening, the clouds split open like a wound, and a storm pours out. Seraph's wings tilt under the gust of wind, and Adrian tightens his grip on the saddle. His other hand finds the sword without thinking. There is a sharp scream inside the storm, too deliberate to be nature. 3 shadows dive from behind the clouds. Their wings cut like sickles, and riders in ice armor cling to their backs. Dragon riders of the Frost-Crown Kingdom. They have arrived earlier than the stories said, and they are here for the same reason.
"Give up the flame," one of them shouts. The wind tears the words apart. Sereth answers with a deep roar, like thunder inside a well. Adrian wastes no breath. He does only one thing. He makes a way forward. An iron-cold arrow scrapes his shoulder plate, shaving off a chip of metal. Sereth twists hard. The storm becomes both shield and trap. Adrian draws his sword, and the blade flashes once in the snow mist, like a brief star. The dragons cross in the air, wings slam like war drums, claws rake scales, and sparks jump in the dark. Adrian leans low as they pass. His sword cuts across a saddle strap. The sound of it snapping disappears into the wind. One enemy rider slips, reaches for anything, and grabs only empty air. He falls into the black space under the clouds, swallowed by the storm. The other two do not retreat. They fight harder because they know their own fire is dying too. One rider crushes a shard of frost crystal in his fist. The crystal bursts into needles of ice that fly toward Sereth's eyes. Sereth screams and turns its head, blinking fast. For a moment, its rhythm breaks. Adrian's stomach drops like a stone. He is not afraid for himself. He is afraid of what happens if he fails. If he falls here, the city will fall with him. The people who still believe the light torch can rise again. The king who placed the last knight in Adrian's hands. Their hope ties itself around his chest like rope. It hurts, but it also holds him up. Adrian takes the second wave of ice needles on his shoulder. His armor rings with sharp taps. He lifts his sword and points the tip into the thickest wall of cloud. "Sereth," he calls. The dragon understands the decision in his voice. Sereth pulls its wings tight and dives straight into the heart of the storm. The enemy riders chase, sure this is panic. Inside the clouds, the world turns strange. Hail hides like dark stones. Lightning twists like white snakes. Adrian forces himself to count each wing beat. He finds the pattern, then waits. When a bolt of lightning strikes down, he moves. He shifts hard to the side, one clean turn at the exact moment. Sereth skims past the edge of the lightning. Heat and electricity scatter bright sparks across its scales. The first enemy rider is slower by half a breath. Lightning hits the dragon's wing bone. A scream tears through the storm. The dragon spins out of control like a kite with a broken string and drops. The last enemy rider pulls back and circles outside the clouds. He does not leave. He waits for a better angle to kill. Below, the storm thins for a moment. A white plane appears, bright enough to sting the eyes. At its center stands an ancient stone ring, like the finger bones of a giant. In the middle of the ring, a crack glows red. It is not light, it is heat. The source of the life torch is there. Blood as the key. Sereth lands on the ice with a sound like glass being tapped. Adrian steps down, sword in hand. The blade drags lightly over the ice and leaves a pale line behind it. A path, or a line that cannot be taken back. The stone ring is older than the kingdom's oldest songs. Along the crack, worn letters are carved into the rock. Adrian leans close and reads what he can. Blood as the key, an oath as the lock. His breath grows fast, but not from the cold. He turns the sword across his palm and cuts. Blood falls onto the stone. The drops hiss and turn into thin steam.
Deep in the crack, the red glow jumps once, like an eye opening. This fire does not burn wood. It burns resolve. It climbs toward him as if it can smell the choice inside his heart. Pain bites up his arm, sharp and clean, as if the flame is writing something into his bones. Adrian grits his teeth. He drives the sword tip into a narrow slot beside the crack. His sword becomes the lock. His blood becomes the key. The stone ring begins to hum, low and heavy. The crack widens. Heat rolls out and white fog explodes across the ice. A piece of fire rises from the depth, like a fragment of a sun lifted from a well. Adrian reaches out. The flame settles into his hand. It does not destroy his skin, but it shakes his whole body. And then, visions. He sees the Capitol's torch burning tall again. He sees people cheering in the snow, faces glowing with relief. But he also sees another winter city, Frost-Crown. Children shiver in dark halls. Mothers hold empty blankets and stare at nothing. 2 kingdoms, 2 dying fires. 1 continent forced to choose who becomes a beast first. Adrian seals the living flame inside a fire casket made for the journey. Runes of the royal house line its inner walls. They were dull before. Now they glow. He locks the lid. Wings beat the air above. Adrian looks up. The last enemy rider drops onto the ice beyond the stone ring. He drives his spear into the ground. Cold mist crawls along the metal tip. "Give me the casket," the rider says, "or you will not leave this place alive." CEFR growls, claws digging into the ice. Adrian stands between the casket and the spear. His hand falls to his sword again. He has held this sword all day, again and again, as if the weapon is reminding him, every choice will be paid for by someone. "I carry more than an order," Adrian says. "I carry the people's chance to live. And I carry the king's last night." The rider lifts his spear. Ice rises from the ground in sharp spikes. There is no second language now, only the language of battle. An oath in the snow. Adrian moves first. He draws his sword and steps in fast. The blade cuts through the cold fog toward the rider's shoulder. The enemy answers with a sharp lift of the spear. Ice spikes burst from the ground, forcing Adrian to step back half a pace. He does not retreat far. Speed is everything, like crossing a broken bridge in one breath. Adrian signals CEFR. The dragon surges forward and beats its wings. A hard wind tears the fog apart. With the fog gone, the rider's sight is exposed. Adrian takes the half-second he needs. His sword slides along the spear shaft and cuts a leather guard strap. The rider's grip slips. Adrian drives the sword hilt into the rider's helmet. A dull clang. The rider stumbles. The mask shifts and tired eyes appear, stubborn but human. Adrian's sword stops at the rider's throat. 1 inch more and it ends. But Adrian remembers the vision. If Frost-Crown's fire dies, war will not end. It will grow worse. Desperate people do desperate things. Adrian lowers his sword. He turns and locks the fire casket to the saddle at his side. That single motion puts him in danger. It is like offering his own neck to the blade. The enemy rider freezes. His spear tip drops a little. "I'm taking the fire," Adrian says. But fire should not belong to only one throne. He wipes his blood along the edge of his sword. Then he points the sword tip toward a second empty slot in the stone. The source answers an oath, he says. If you are willing to bind it with your vow, it will burn for you too. The rider's breathing grows heavy. His eyes move between the empty slot and Adrian's face. His hands tighten, then loosen, then tighten again. Far away, more wings sound in the sky. Not one dragon, several. Frost Crown reinforcements, or the capital's riders, or something older that the fire has awakened. Sereth spreads its wings. Snow rises like a storm of white letters. Adrian climbs into the saddle and grips the sword again. He looks back once. The enemy rider stands at the edge of the stone ring. His spear lifts slowly, then lowers, as if he is choosing between survival and something harder. The fire casket warms against the saddle, like a heartbeat. Adrian knows the journey home will be no easier than the journey here, and he knows the real war may only be beginning. Not a war of steel, but a war of what people become when the world forces them to carry impossible weight. Sereth leaps into the gray sky. The stone ring shrinks below, and the red crack looks like an eye that stays open. Behind them, the enemy rider places a hand on his weapon, and for the first time, he does not chase. Snow keeps falling. Winter remains deep, and the fate of the life torch rests inside one fire casket and inside two oaths that have not yet been spoken.